process field notes.
Last week, I watched 10 boys, 26 boys, realize it was over. The final whistle, varsity soccer, end of the season, end of the road. For the seniors, end of the thing they've been doing since they were about 6 years old. Some of them stood on the field for a while after, not talking, just standing, soaking it in. Like if they didn't leave, it wouldn't be finished yet. I'm an assistant coach. I was standing there too. And what I felt wasn't just sadness, it was heavier than that. It was the weight of knowing we didn't get there. That something had gone wrong, not in one moment, but over many, many months. And everybody in that circle was already beginning to tell themselves a different story about why. This is about failure. And not the kind of failure you read about in business books, where someone fails their way to billions of dollars. Not the kind with the redemption arc already baked in. The real kind. The kind that just sits there, heavy and unresolved, daring you to do something honest with it. But more than that, this is about what happens after failure. Because failure itself is just a result. It's neutral. What makes it poison or medicine is the next thing you do. Do you look out the window or do you look in the mirror? James Baldwin wrote that not everything that is faced can be changed, and nothing can be changed until it is faced. He was writing about race in America, about a country that refused to look at itself honestly, but the principle was universal. The thing you won't face is the thing that owns you. The failure you won't examine is the failure you're condemned to repeat. Baldwin spent his whole life insisting on honesty as a discipline. Not optimism, not despair, just willingness to see what's actually there and reckon with it. He called it the price of the ticket. The cost of being fully alive is the willingness to look at the truth, especially when it implicates you. In 1910, Theodore Roosevelt gave a speech in Paris. One passage from it survived the last century better than almost anything else an American president has ever said. He called it the man in the arena. The idea was simple. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the fight. Not the critic in the stands, not the spectator who points out how the strong man stumbles. The person who's in it, whose face is covered in dust and sweat, who comes up short again and again. Brené Brown took that same passage and built her life's work around it. She studied what it actually costs to step into the arena. Not physically, but emotionally. What she found was people who show up the most fully are the ones who made peace with the possibility of failure, not the ones who have eliminated it. The ones who have accepted it as price of participation. I think about this a lot because I've been in arenas my entire adult life, and none of them have gone the way I was promised. In my formative adult years, I lived through the largest terrorist attack on American soil, a war that never seemed to end, the biggest economic collapse since the Great Depression, a global pandemic, and every few years another unprecedented thing, and every time the same demand. Figure it out, adapt, keep going. Nobody handed my generation a playbook. We got a series of explosions, and we were told to build something in their crater. There's a phrase we use without thinking about it: bite the bullet. It means to push through the pain, do the hard thing, but the origin is literal. Before anesthesia existed, battlefield surgeons would give wounded soldiers a musket ball or a leather strap to bite down on during surgery. There was no numbing it. The only options were to endure the pain or die from the wound. That's not a metaphor for toughness. It's a metaphor for the moments when the only way forward is straight through the thing that hurts. After last week's game, the parents arrived. And I wanted to be careful here because parents love their kids, and love makes people irrational, and I understand that. But what happened next is the part that's been sitting in my chest for months. The conversations weren't about what the boys could have done differently. They were about what the coaches could have done, what the younger players should have done, why their son didn't get enough time, enough chances, enough recognition. The finger pointed everywhere except inward. And the boys heard this, they absorbed it. The season failed because of someone else. The lineup was wrong, the system was wrong, the coaching was wrong. Nobody asked the harder question. Nobody said, what did you do in the off season? How many miles did you run? What did you eat before the game? When the moment came and you had the ball and the chance, were you ready? Were you fit enough? Focused enough? Hungry enough? Because some of those boys stopped running on the field, red in the face, hands on their knees. And instead of letting that be the lesson, instead of letting that failure teach them something real about preparation and pride, the adults in their lives told them it was someone else's fault. That is the most dangerous kind of criticism. Not the kind that stings, the kind that excuses. There are two kinds of criticisms in the world. One says, this didn't work, and here's what we can build from the wreckage. The other says, this didn't work, and here's who's to blame. The first one requires you take ownership. The second one lets you stay exactly where you are. The first one is construction. The second one is demolition dressed up as commentary. Me, I see sports as civics. I don't mean that loosely, I mean that literally. A team is a small society. It has roles, rules, expectations, conflicts. It has people who show up and people who coast. It has moments where the group has to decide what it values. And what a young person learns inside that structure about accountability, about effort, about what happens when things don't go their way, is the thing they carry into everything that comes after. College, career, marriage, parenthood. So when I'm coaching, I'm not thinking about minutes. I'm thinking about what will you do when you get your opportunity? Will you be ready? And when it doesn't go your way, because sometimes it won't, will you take yourself off and say you're injured? Or will you fight until you've got nothing left? And then find a little bit more. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, was born into slavery. He had no power, no throne, no army. Everything he wrote about came from the position of someone who controlled nothing about his circumstances and everything about his response. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That's a different thing coming from a man who was enslaved than from an emperor writing in a palace. The same idea, but the weight of it changes depending on who's carrying it. Maya Angelou said something similar, but warmer. She said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." That's the version of accountability I want to teach. Not punishment, not shame, just the expectation that you look honestly at what happened, learn from it, and come back different. That's all. That's everything. And this is where it all gets very uncomfortable, because we live in a time and place of abundance, of affluence, where a lot of things come easy and effort is optional, where you can skip the offseason and still make the roster, where you can eat fast food before the game because nobody's going to stop you, where you can coast on talent for a long time before the bill comes due. But the bill always comes due. Grit isn't built in comfort. It's built in the moment you choose discomfort on purpose. It's making your bed when no one's checking, making your own lunch when your mom could have done it, being on time, being early, being the person who asks, "What can I learn today?" Not "What do I already know?" That's not about deprivation. It's about pride, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need an audience. And the failure, the real failure, isn't losing the game. It's never asking yourself why. It's walking off the field with you and your parents' story in your ears instead of your own reckoning in your chest. Because at some point, very soon, there will be no coach, no ref, no sideline, just you and a situation that isn't going your way. And the question will be the same one it's always been. What will you do now? There's a mirror in every failure. Most people walk past it. They look out the window instead. They blame the weather, the ref, the lineup, the coach, the circumstances, and they feel better for a while, but nothing changes. The ones who stop and look, and really look, they're the ones who come back different. Not because the mirror tells them something kind. It usually doesn't. It tells them something true. What could I have done? Not the coach, not the winger, not the keeper, not my parents, me. What could I have done? Start there. Start every time there. That's where grit is. That's where the light is. And that's the way through.
These are process field notes,